Hey, this is page 1 of Unit 4, the United States Constitution. And we are reading about today Shays' Rebellion. Shays' Rebellion is known as the final straw for the Articles of Confederation. Remember that a constitution is a rule book for government, and that the U.S. Constitution we have today is not the first constitution we had. The first one was known as the Articles of Confederation. And it was known as being a very weak document. It gave the government very little power. And during the Revolutionary War, during the second part of it, when the Articles were in operation, anyone who was a member of George Washington's camp generally left that war saying, we need a stronger government. Because Washington was left with very little supplies. Anyone who went through Valley Forge, anyone who went through his campaigns against New York, anyone who had to deal with trying to organize the logistics of getting down to Yorktown to trap Cornwallis, knows that the Continental Congress could not provide supplies necessary. And Shays' Rebellion happens after we win the war, but it is evidence for why the Articles are not strong enough. And this is, for a lot of people, the reason why they decided, no, we need something stronger. We need a new constitution, a new rule book for government, something that gives the government a lot more strength, something that gives them a lot more strength. This happens from August 1786 to June 1787. Shays' Rebellion was led by and named after Daniel Shays. Daniel Shays was a Revolutionary War veteran, which means he fought in the war, and a farmer living in Massachusetts. 4,000 people took place in the uprising, and they were known as Shaysites. So if you were a Shaysite, you fought in Shays' Rebellion following Daniel Shays. Shays' Rebellion took place because of the rural population. They believed that the richer merchant population was imposing unfair economic terms on them. So the farmers out in the middle of the country were angry that the big city folk with all the money were passing laws that is getting them even more poor. The rich merchants were making the rural population pay taxes by controlling the elected legislatures and debts with money that they, the poor farmers, didn't have, since they were used to using a barter system. What this means is that the richer merchants, the people with the money, were living in the big cities, and they were using their influence to control the laws. And they, one of the laws they passed was that everybody has to pay all of their debts using money. Well, the poorest farmers, which were the greatest population, had no money, and they had never needed any money. If they needed something, they would trade for it. Say, okay, I want your horse. I have 3 pigs. 1 horse, 3 pigs. You want to trade? That's how they did things. A lot of times they would make alcohol. Whiskey was popular. Rum was popular, and they would trade alcohol and use alcohol as money. But those big city merchants didn't want that. They wanted money they could spend in the cities. Daniel Shays and some of the other soldiers who had fought in the Revolutionary War began to protest against these unfair terms when they realized that none of them could pay any of these taxes because they didn't have money. Before Shays' Rebellion, the rural population would send petitions and proposals to the state to try and get them to issue more paper money to help them out. All of these petitions were ignored by the state. The state cannot just print money. If they just simply print money, it's worthless. It's called buying power. If everybody has $1 million, then everybody has $0. Your stuff is only worth relative to what other people have around you. For money to have value, it has to have a certain amount of scarcity. Otherwise, what's the point of it? The first protest happened in August of 1786 at a county court in Northampton, Massachusetts. So once again, the Massachusetts is the source of a lot of anger. In September 1786, Daniel Shays attempted to prevent the Supreme Judicial Court from meeting but the local military knew he was coming and stationed 300 men to protect the courthouse. By the end of 1786, groups from all over the state had managed to shut down courts, creating a feeling of anarchy and disorder. If you look at the picture above me, you'll see Daniel Shays taking out one of the local judges, beating him up and throwing him in a river. As a result, Samuel Adams, one of the founding fathers of the United States, also one of the founding fathers of the Sons of Liberty, and you remember the Sons of Liberty didn't always operate with the nicest of actions, tarring and feathering. Samuel Adams helped to draw up the Riot Act, which was a law that meant the rebels could be arrested and jailed without a trial. He even suggested people should be punished with execution. You're a traitor, die. A total of 18 men were sentenced to death under the Riot Act. Alongside the Riot Act, Samuel Adams tried to help the rural population by stating that they could pay their taxes with farm goods rather than money. Okay, fine. You don't have to pay your taxes with money. You can continue paying your taxes with whiskey, with rum, with horses, pigs, crops you've grown. However, at this point, people were already angry, and it didn't stop them. In January of 1787, the governor began creating a private army to fight against the rebels. Why is the governor creating an army? Oh, it's because the United States was not creating an army. The United States couldn't create an army. They had no money to create an army, and they owed a lot of money fighting the British in the Revolutionary War. At the end of January 1787, Shays and his Shaysites decided that they would attack the Springfield Armory and surround the area, ready for an attack on January 25th. One of Shays' men, Luke Day, changed his mind about the armory attack and said he wouldn't be ready until the following day. Unfortunately, this message was intercepted by the military, so Shays never knew that the date had been changed. When Shays and his men arrived at the armory in Springfield, they were met by the military because the information had leaked out, and the group fled to the north. They stole supplies, and they took people hostage along the way to avoid General Lincoln, who had been sent with his troops after them. Although Shays was eventually caught, he was pardoned in 1788, and he chose to go into hiding. Now, this last part is the most important part, which is why it's bold. Shays' rebellion helped prove that the Articles of Confederation were too weak. Under the Articles, the government had too much difficulty dealing with the causes and the effects of the rebellion. The U.S. Constitution was established in 1787, partially as a direct result of Shays' rebellion, and it was presided over by George Washington. Its aim was to give the government more structure and power. By its, we mean the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution was supposed to give the government more structure and more power, something that was lacking during the rebellion against Great Britain in the previous war. So hopefully this was helpful, and hopefully you're off to a great start.